your friends, families, neighbors.
You can even become a shareholder by purchasing a minimum of 50 shares at $5 per share. Membership is super easy and convenient. Just visit our newly opened credit union building on Upper Newgate Street, Monday to Fridays, 8:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. with proof of ID and address, along with $15 to cover registration and password. And you'll be set and on your way. For further information, call 462-8888 or 727-2285. People's Cooperative Credit Union Limited. Today, tomorrow, together.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Captain's Corner. Harold Double, the captain, is on the corner. Good evening to you, sir.
Yes, good evening.
And I'm Sean Nicholas, your host for this evening. And we want to say a very special welcome to all our listeners on Progressive 107.3 FM. Thank you for being our faithful listeners. And to those of you who are joining us, whether via Facebook, YouTube, whatever platform, we say thank you and welcome to the Captain's Corner. Remember to call a friend, your families, and let them know that Captain's Corner is on. And of course, you're sharing the live so that they can all hear what is being said on the Captain's Corner this evening. Now, Harold, another week. We have come out of last weekend. We had some anxiety preparing for tropical storm, what was then Tropical Storm Fiona, and we've been saved. We've been
Yes,
saved.
but before I go any further,
Yes.
it would be remiss of me if I did not wish you happy birthday. So,
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you.
Happy birthday. Glad that you're here, even though it's your birthday night. So
National duty.
happy to have
Okay,
you.
thank
but
you.
look, yes, I think we should all give thanks that we were spared the worst of Fiona. You realize Fiona missed us, went south, did some damage in Guadeloupe, and then hit Puerto Rico quite hard. And we saw the effects of the storm in Puerto Rico, and it's gone on to the Dominican Republic, where they're also experiencing some difficulty. So I just have to say that we must be grateful to the Almighty and give thanks that we were spared the worst of, I was about to say hurricane, but tropical storm.
Well, no hurricane.
Yeah, tropical
yes,
storm
yeah.
Fiona.
Okay.
But what is amazing though
sure.
is that, you know, even though it was a tropical storm, you know, it knocked out the electricity. For almost 48 hours, we didn't have any electricity. I just wonder what was really happening there. At this stage, I wouldn't have thought that an electricity, we'd have such a outage of electricity. You know, this wasn't even a Category 1 hurricane. However, you know, it also affected the water.
Yes.
Many areas couldn't get any water. It's just a lack of planning, it appears, as though things are just not set up in a way that allows us to really utilize what we have in the best way so that we can deliver quality service to our people. So this is something that we definitely will have to look into to see how we can create a better arrangement so that we have infrastructure that is able to withstand and is more resilient. So this is something that I really would want to look into more deeply, because our people really deserve better rather than, you know, a tropical storm and, you know, we're out of power out of water and that type of thing. And then you look at the dams and the ponds. Again, no consideration that the country was going through a dry period, which should have been that period when arrangements were being made inevitably for when we would get some rainfall. But again, you see, nothing has been done with any of the dams to prepare the dams for storage. And so I don't know if the idea is to go completely to reverse osmosis, but reverse osmosis is more expensive than getting water from dams. And so I don't know what the plan is. It doesn't appear as though there's any plan, because here it is, you know, we could be facing a period when we could be getting some rainfall, but we haven't done anything to prepare our catchments, especially the dams, for any rainfall that may be coming our way.
So you're suggesting then that there needs to be some review or further assessment in terms of our resilience where APUA is concerned and the providing or provisioning of these utility services?
Inevitably, we definitely need that, and we must carry out a full audit and detailed examination of our utility sector, making sure that both water and electricity, that we fix those problems once and for all.
Okay. All right. You were somewhat in focus this week. You had some vindication coming down to you in the courts. There's a public apology that is issued to you. Perhaps you just want to make mention of that at this time, since it's about you.
Well, yes. I mean, I feel vindicated. You know, there are people who go on the radio and they say things, and I sued Donna Shire, and I mentioned it on this program. I sued her, and the matter went to mediation because, you know, a lot of these matters, when they go to the court will recommend mediation. Now, when you go to mediation, all the cards are laid on the table, and so we know exactly where we stand. And rather than go through the rigors of a trial, if it is clear that something will not win when you go to court, then you'll find that the side that recognizes that this doesn't make any sense to go to court, then what they will do is they will find a way to settle. And this, in effect, was a settlement. She agreed to apologize to me unreservedly, and if you look at the apology, you will see that she gives an unreserved apology. In other words, no strings attached to this apology. And based on the mediation agreement, she's also going to pay the costs of my attorney. So I'd like to thank my attorney, Mr. Charlesworth Tabor, who laid out the case in very clear terms. And when it came to mediation, she admitted that she would apologize, or she agreed to apologize, and I said I would accept the apology. And so the apology is now out. No matter how they try to dance around it and make it seem as though it's just an apology, but it's not really an admission. That is what it is. She's apologized to me, and I have accepted the apology, and she's also agreed in the apology not to repeat any statements which could be adversely interpreted as far as my standing is concerned. And we're listening to the things that she and others are saying in relation to this apology. And if we have to go back to court, we'll go back to court. But this time it won't just be an apology. We'll go all the way, because it is very clear that the apology is intended to clear my name completely. And if any of those persons who have been on that radio station, if any of them go down that road again, I'm going to sue them too. But this time, I'm not going to accept an apology. I'm only going to accept damages in hard money.
Okay, so that's some good news there. Now, last week we raised the issue of the $200 million that this government borrowed, and unknown to most persons. And as we said, you know, it showed up in the estimates. And you still have some concerns where that 200 million or 540
540 million, and we still have pensioners being paid late. We still have truckers through solid waste not being paid. We have workers in the public sector still owed money. We have the police stations in a dilapidated state. Police, almost every station is in some form of rented accommodation. What we see happening now shows that they have wasted that money, because none of that money has been put to the benefit and use of the people who really matter. And it is almost unthinkable that this administration could have borrowed $540 million, and yet Social Security is still a problem. You would have thought that the money would have been used to help Social Security as a priority. And so we have called on the government to say to the nation, what is it that they have done with this money that they secretly borrowed, said nothing to the country, and we do not know if they have it stored up, hoping to release it at an election and keep people suffering in the meantime. They need to clear the air on this issue.
And the last point is a good point. To say you have the money, but yet there's so many things in the country that need addressing. Just this week we heard news that the General Post Office, for example, has been refusing to accept mails that are destined to the United States, again because of non-payment to an airline. There are so many things that need addressing, and as some people say, it seems as if we're heading towards a failed state, as they claimed some time ago.
Yes, this latest thing with the post office, again, we need them to come and clear the air as far as that is concerned. But what my intelligence sources are saying is that they have failed to pay the airline that deals with mail and that type of thing. And so the airline is refusing to transport mail from Antigua to the United States. This is going to place a lot of people at a disadvantage. Those persons who rely on the post office to send whatever it is they have to send to the United States, or to receive whatever it is they have to receive from the United States, you have a government that appears incapable of handling the most basic things. And so it is important for the administration to come out and say to the public exactly what has happened. Why is it that we're not being able to send mail from Antigua to the United States of America? Is it a fact that the government has failed to pay one of the major airlines, and therefore they cannot get any mail out of Antigua to the USA? Somebody needs to speak up, because people are being placed at a great disadvantage.
And where the General Post Office is concerned, I think it has gone to a place other than just mail. There are people who depend on it, for example, their pensions and other things coming out of the U.S. that will be greatly affected. And it's both ways. We cannot send, and those who are abroad cannot send to us.
Right, and as you said, people who look for their little pension checks coming out of the federal government. This is something that will definitely hurt a lot of people.
You see, about a year ago, we had a lot of talk about an economic recovery program. I think we are a year on. What has become of that? And has there been any difference in terms of a turning around or seemingly turning around the economy as a result of the inputs of this economic recovery program?
Nada.
Yeah.
And again, you ask yourself, what does this administration actually get right? Now, here it is. We had the Economic Recovery Committee, and some persons, I know, well-intentioned, they participated. Out of this Economic Recovery Committee, it appears as though the big idea that emerged was to build a new city out at Willoughby Bay. We haven't heard anything at all about that. We haven't heard whether any master planning is taking place. We haven't heard anything. It was just thrown up in the air, and 1 year later, we're still not hearing anything clear in terms of what has become of this economic recovery plan and what has become of this new city that they were supposed to be building. I think they have a duty to at least keep the country informed, because they came with a lot of fanfare stating that they had come up with this big plan, this big report. But at the end of the day, a year has passed and they have not come back to the nation to say exactly what is happening.
But has there been any meeting of the said committee since the days when, you know, there was much talk about building the city? Because I think the idea then was to see how, coming out of the pandemic, we can stimulate the economy to see growth and all of that. What has happened?
Well, to be honest, I mean, many persons gave them the benefit of the doubt and were prepared to say, okay, this is an idea, let's hear what you have to say. But I certainly am one firmly of the view that the idea is not well-founded, the ideas lacks proper and due consideration, and instead of building a new city, I believe a lot of new ideas have come in terms of revitalizing places like Parham, revitalizing other sections, or just revitalizing St. John's, maybe developing an area around St. John's, the way, for example, they did in Jamaica with New Kingston. But you already have most of the amenities, you already have most of the facilities, and so in terms of your costs, you're not going to incur the same level of cost. But my main point is, they came up with this idea, people were prepared to give them the benefit of the doubt, and 1 year later, they have not come back to the people to say, what has become of the Economic Recovery Committee? Well, we didn't participate because we feared, and I think it has turned out that we were right, that it would have been just a talk shop. And so said, so done. Here it is, they did all the fancy work, and there's nothing to show for it now, nothing at all.
Is it too late? Do you think that there can be some revitalization or, you know, empaneling of this Economic Recovery Committee?
No, I think first of all, the government lacks the will and the government lacks the way. And that being the problem, I don't see it going anywhere. Because they talk about economic powerhouse. Nobody is going to object to an idea of an economic powerhouse. But there's no clear plan as to how you're going to achieve this economic powerhouse. It's all talk. Similarly, the Economic Recovery Committee, talking about building this new city and all that, it's all about talk. In terms of a strategic plan, a development plan as to how you're going to go from point A to point B, involving the people in the discussion at every step of the way to make sure you get the necessary buy-in so people understand what is happening. There's been nothing of the sort. Really and truly, this is an administration that does not have a clear idea of how to implement. And that is clearly the case with everything that they have touched. We've had the chronicle of the 26 failed projects, not to mention the 10 that Lennox Western mentioned in the Parliament. So we're looking at well over 30 potential projects which could have created between 7,000 and 10,000 jobs in Antigua and Barbuda, and they failed to get any of these off the ground. That in itself testifies to their incompetence. No matter what they say, it testifies to their incompetence. And only the UPP right now can make a difference. And that's why we say UPP is the right choice. Because this administration has clearly lost its way. It has no idea as to how to stimulate economic activity, and it has no idea in terms of how to fix the existing problems that we face.
But as you talk about projects, I'm being reminded that the Royalton is one that is expanding. As we understand, it will be expanding properties over at Halcyon. What are your views where that one is concerned?
Well, if the Royalton is indeed expanding over at Halcyon, there's nothing wrong with that. And, you know, we welcome any project that's a realistic project that's going to bring employment for our people and help to ease the burden of the backs of our people. what I would say, however, is that there are very few performing investors in the economy of Antigua and Barbuda in terms of serious investors. And we're happy that the investment that took place at Royalton, that is an investor, or the person who invested there, Stephen Hunter, I'm very sorry, Stephen Hunter. He came during the period of the UPP. He actually wrote a letter, it was addressed at the time to then Minister of Tourism, John McGinley, where he said that he liked what he saw. He was happy with the discussions that he had held with Minister McGinley at the time, myself, and the Prime Minister, in terms of looking at the potential. And he indicated that he will be doing something, but he would want to have the elections pass first, so that if there's a new administration, he'd want to know what their attitude is going to be, if their attitude would be as helpful as the attitude of the UPP. And, well, the government changed, and they were happy to have an investor that we had brought to the table. And it took them almost 2 or 3 years before they were able to get things moving again. So if Royalton is expanding so that they will be developing the property down at Halcyon, sure. If it's going to create construction jobs, sure. If they're going to be jobs in the hotel sector after, certainly. What I want to repeat is UPP, we're happy that we brought Royalton to the table and that Royalton is expanding. And with a change of government, we will continue whatever work that they're doing, and we will make certain that our people are the ultimate beneficiaries of anything that is done.
Okay. I want to draw your attention to a news item that we had this week. Well, I think it started last week, of the dredging that's happening at the harbor. We're now understanding that there is a further delay in terms of the dredging, which should have been completed some time ago. And one of the reasons is that the tools that are being used are somehow not being able to stand up to the rigors of the work that is expected, or that is being undertaken. What is your take on that?
My take on that is that whole dredging situation has become scandalous and will have to be investigated. We've seen an excavator there literally scooping water and putting the water, taking the water from one place to another. Now, nobody seems to know how much has been spent on this dredging, but we know that people are making money on this dredging exercise, because it's the longest dredging program I have ever seen. I mean, the dredging has been going on forever and ever and ever. And when you park and you look and you see the excavator literally just scooping up water and taking it from one end, throwing it at another end, you have to ask yourself the question, what is really going on here? Now, they're saying that they have rocks in the harbor. Wouldn't they have discovered that beforehand? I mean, today, the science has developed to a point where we know the type of soil you have on Mars. You know the type of soil you have on the moon. We know the soil that we have on the seabed. We know on the terrain on the sea, the rock formations. We are able to determine those things. What is it with this administration that they would have been using this excavator, and then they come and tell us that there's a rock down there? What would have influenced them to just start the work without first getting some situational analysis, some clear understanding? What is the situation under the sea? Wasting taxpayers' money, doing things that waste time. It is really scandalous what they're doing down at the port. And just remember, let us be no doubt, in that agreement with Global Ports, it is the taxpayers of Antigua and Barbuda who bear the cost of the dredging. It is not Global Ports who's paying for the dredging. It's the taxpayers of Antigua. They get the benefit
of the port, but we're the ones who carry the cost of dredging. And we're just dredging, and nobody seems to understand what's happening.
And a seemingly movable timeline, because there seems to be no end.
Not only movable timeline, it's no non-existent timeline. It seems as though they just mean to keep dredging and making money. Because how can you be dredging for all this time? And you have the Oasis class ships that we were promised and told that the purpose of the dredging is so that we can bring the Oasis class ships to Antigua. And then we watch the Oasis ship sail past Antigua and go on to St. Kitts. All that we could do is wave. I mean, it's really a sad, sad story that this government has to tell. And it has to be investigated, because we have to see how tax dollars have been spent so that account can be given for whatever has been spent that ought not to have been spent. And we want to see who has been really benefiting from the work that has been done, and who are the people creaming off the money the taxpayers are paying.
Also, a year ago, we remember the cry for those persons who were not vaccinated or chose not to be vaccinated, and they had as the mandate to either take the vaccine or go home. It's a year on, and we have not heard in terms of any compensation for those persons who were sent home without pay and without hope of whether or not they would have gotten their jobs back. Your comment on that?
That remains one of the issues that we are fundamentally opposed to and committed to. We say that we have, as a party, supported the vaccination program, but what we do not support telling people that you can't work unless you're vaccinated. In our view, that is cruel, inhumane, and it is just an anti-people policy. So we are committed to paying the 2 months that is owed to those persons who exercised their choice and decided not to be vaccinated. And the interesting thing is, just as the mandate had come in, is the same way it went out. Those people who were supposed to be placing everybody else at risk, they were allowed to come in, and we haven't heard of any adverse consequences as a result of that decision. So the whole decision, it was misguided, and we recommit ourselves to compensating those persons who lost the 2 months' pay because they exercised their choice.
Okay, we're going to take a break at this time, and when we come back, those of you who have questions or comments, send them to us via Facebook, and of course you will be sure to have them read on air. And if you haven't done so as yet, share the live, invite your friends, families, neighbors, everyone to be part of Captain's Corner. We'll be right back after this.
Limited. We offer savings accounts, deposits, fixed deposits, loans, among other related services. You can even become a shareholder by purchasing a minimum of 50 shares at $5 per share. Membership is super easy and convenient. Just visit our newly opened credit union building on Upper Newgate Street, Monday to Fridays, 8:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. with proof of ID and address, along with $15 to cover registration and passbook, and you'll be set and on your way. For further information, call 462-8888 or 727-2285. People's Cooperative Credit Union Limited. Today, tomorrow, together.
And we say welcome back to the Captain's Corner. Thanks so much for joining us. And just as we went to the break, we were talking about the mandate and those persons who chose not to be vaccinated. and were asked to stay at home, and you're saying that a UPP administration, you'll definitely address that to make sure that,
Absolutely.
the right of choice
No,
is
absolutely.
respected.
We would treat this matter in a very responsible way. We would not threaten people that, they're going to lose their jobs and that type of thing if they choose not to be vaccinated in that context. And we know exactly what we're saying, because it's not as though we do not understand the importance of vaccination. However, it was not right to give persons that ultimatum, and persons lost their salaries, and they really suffered tremendously. And so we're giving that assurance, and I just wanted to come back and give that reassurance so that those persons who may have missed it, what I said, that there can be absolutely no doubt in people's minds about that at all.
Okay. Earlier, when we spoke at your introduction, you made mention of the capacity for APUA in terms of our resilience following a natural disaster like we had with Tropical Storm Fiona. And one of the questions I wanted to raise then, we have electricity. We talk about our capacity where electricity is concerned and whether or not we're able to bounce back after. But there are communities in Antigua and Barbuda where members are crying out to say on a regular basis they face outages and that sort of thing. And I wanted to ask the question where we had a project in the early part of the Labour Party administration of some solar plants, solar panel, the Peter Verdi project for clarity. What has become of that? Because here it is that we're looking at alternative forms of energy in terms of solar energy. We know the scandal where there was no, the projects came, the project started and there were no batteries. What has ever happened to that, and how do you see a project like that improving our capacity where electricity is concerned?
Well, that's the whole point again. They entered into an agreement where the plant was supposed to be producing, I think, either 5 or 10 megawatts of power between the airport and Bethesda. I think it was a total of 10. Now, how do you produce electricity using solar panels and not have any storage batteries and not factor that in? And then years later, you're telling us that you're looking about procuring the batteries. That is totally unacceptable. And we have to be the ones paying for it. So we see the solar farm up there, but there are no storage batteries. It's the same way they have the storage tanks for water, and they're not connecting those either. It's as though they don't understand that in any system of this nature, you have your source, you have your storage, and you have your distribution. Those are 3 different areas. Wherever you get in, whatever you get in from, in the case of the solar panels, you get in the sunlight, you're converting that into electricity. Okay, so fine. But you have to store it, and so that it makes your distribution system more efficient. Same thing with water. But there doesn't appear to be any clear plan in terms of how we move this country forward. Everything is on the basis of some kind of racket. We heard all about Peter Verdi. We know he ended up being convicted. And as far as I remember, I think he certainly ended up in some sort of serious problems with the law. But that's not our concern here tonight. The fact is, what did Antigua and Barbuda get from this Antigua Labour Party government in terms of that solar panel? How much did we spend? And what benefits did we actually get? And when you look at it, you're going to see very few. And this is really where we need to focus and hone in on as far as the Labour Party administration is concerned. The way they waste money. People keep asking. I have, a couple of friends, and they have friends, etc. They ask, so where's the UPP going to get the money from? And I keep saying to those persons who ask, our problem is not the expenditure side of the statement. It is on the, sorry, it's not on the revenue side of the statement. It's on the expenditure side. We're making more money now in Antigua as a government than we ever made before. Or I should say the Labour Party is collecting more money today than any previous administration has ever collected. And yet, the more money that is collected, it's the more money that they seem to need. It's all about getting a proper plan and stimulating private sector growth and development. There was a gentleman on the radio the other day, and he was speaking about approaches. And the approach that he mentioned with respect to private sector-led growth, that's exactly what we have been saying. That the private sector must be incentivized, must be stimulated, must be encouraged, because outside of that, we're spinning top in mud. Now, you look at this government, and they talk about growth, but where's the growth? The growth is in the government sector, in the public sector. Who pays for that growth? One, taxpayers pay for that growth, and two, where they are not, you don't have enough dollars, you borrow. And that's what they've been doing. So the growth is not sustainable growth. The type of growth that you will get under a UPP administration will be growth that is led by the local private sector, creating the conditions. For example, removing the unincorporated business tax. You cannot be encourage entrepreneurship and tax people if they become entrepreneurs, but don't tax them if they are employees. What you're doing is you are incentivizing persons to remain as employees of others. You need to free up the environment. You need to remove those types of impediments to people going into business and successfully building their businesses. So the government clearly has no plan, no vision, because on the one hand, you're planting a tree, and with the other hand, you're cutting down the same tree. We also have said we will reduce the cost of doing business at the port. At the moment, most people pay approximately 50% of the value of the goods in customs, duties, and taxes, between the revenue recovery charge, the ABST, and customs duties. About 50%. And I want those business people who are listening to check what I'm saying carefully. We understand and we know that a lot of business people, in order to survive, they simply cannot afford the taxes at the port. And I'm not going to say that that is an issue that has come up only in the last few years. This is an age-old issue since the days when VC Bird was in power, coming through. But looking at the future and speaking to business people, the amount or the quantity of money that is required in order to pay all your taxes at the border, it makes it very difficult for people to survive. And so what has been happening is that there are persons who are beating the system. And that's a fact. We know that there are people who are beating the system. And one businessman said to me, if you don't do something to beat the system, there's no way you're going to stay in business. That is a view that's reflected by many, and it must be addressed. And so we are saying one of the things that we're going to definitely do is reduce the border taxes. The border taxes, based on the consultations that we've been having, the border taxes should not exceed 25 to 30% of the cost of the goods. Once we reduce the border taxes, you're going to also reduce a lot of the corruption. You're going to reduce the need for people to have to beat the system in order to survive. Because we're not suggesting that the beating of the system is a factor only attributable to greed. It is a survival strategy that many people in business have to employ. And we have to all look at it and face it squarely and not say it's this or that or this person's or that person's fault. What we need to do is look to the solution. And the solution has to be to reduce the cost at the port, increase volume by doing that. By increasing volume, you hopefully are going to increase sales and allow for greater expansion of businesses. And when you couple this with our Fresh Start program to get businesses back up and running, we see that growing the economy in a strategic way, not just talking about it, but having a clear strategic plan as to how we will grow the economy, that's what we need to do. And so I have absolutely no doubt that the strategy has to be growing the economy, but not just any growth, and it cannot be growth that is fueled by borrowing more and more in order to meet day-to-day expenses. It has to be growth that's premised on investment, incentivizing investment by the local private sector, business people, so that the tailor is incentivized to become not just a tailor, but a business into clothing manufacturing, that the plumber is incentivized to develop a plumbing business, that the electrician develops an electrical engineering type business, etc., etc. This is the direction in which we have to go, to give the incentives to our local private sector so that they can expand. And once they expand, they employ more people. Once they employ more people, more spending in the economy, and it takes a lot of the burden off the shoulders of the government. Because everybody knows the government cannot employ everyone. We have to therefore create the necessary conditions, just like we create conditions to build hotels. Antigua is a tourist economy. We incentivize the building of hotels. Well, it's the same strategy that we have to use to incentivize the growth of the local business sector. It can be done, and that's what we really need to do. And so we have real organic growth, growth that comes through the economy based on local input. That's really where we need to be.
Okay, we have some questions coming in on via Facebook. The first one, how will the UPP administration recover and return the lands back to the Crown from all those so-called investors, and is it even possible?
Everything has to be assessed on its merits. You know, I wouldn't sit here and say a UPP government will take back all the land that was sold. We couldn't do that, because when people enter into contracts, it's a binding contract, and you can be sued if you try to interfere with that type of contractual arrangement. However, everything will be under review. We'll have to put everything under review. We'll have to look to see those that can be continued, those that can be of benefit to our people. Some of the terms may have to be renegotiated. For example, in 2004, when we were first elected, lands had been sold to Mr. Barrett out at Devil's Bridge, in that general area, before he constructed the Veranda Hotel. And when we came in, we called him up and we said that the price that he was sold by the previous administration, we are not happy with that price, and we need to renegotiate it. And we did renegotiate it, and we got a much better price for the land from Mr. Barrett at the time, before he constructed the Veranda Hotel. So it can be done. Some you will have to renegotiate. Others, if we have no issue with them, we'll continue, we'll incentivize them, and we try to push if it's going to create employment for our people. And there are others which may be so bad that we'll have to scrap them. And we would find legal ways to scrap any bad arrangement which deprives the people of Antigua and Barbuda of their patrimony, and where we have been obviously taken for a ride by anyone. We will stand up and fight for the rights of our people, in particular the land rights, and making certain that our patrimony is protected.
Okay, someone wants to know whether it was or not, it's a loan. It was a loan that the government took out or took for those solar farms.
Yes, it was a loan. I can't remember how much the loan was for, but they borrowed money in order to pay for that, because they didn't get a grant from anyone. It was based on a loan that
is currently being repaid. I will look for the
Yes.
details for that.
Another question, what do you think about the Prime Minister wanting Antigua and Barbuda to become a republic and asking King Charles for help?
Well, I don't know about asking King Charles for help. The fact is, I am on record as saying
Yes.
that the status of a republic is where we ought to go. I have very strong feelings about swearing allegiance to the heirs and successors of the Queen. You know, when I look, I'm swearing allegiance to Prince William. I'm swearing allegiance to, I think the little one is now, I think his name is, I can't remember his name, I think one of them named Beatrice. No disrespect to them. I'm just simply saying, you know, at this stage in our lives, why should we, as people in the Caribbean, be swearing allegiance to formerly Prince Charles, now King Charles? He's now our head of state, and we're swearing allegiance to him and his children and his grandchildren. That is antiquated, it is anachronistic, it is time for us to move with that. So I'm not saying that because Gaston Brown said it. I said it before he did.
And it has always been the party's
That
position.
has been our position. But what I want to add, however, this has to be done in a non-partisan way. Notice I didn't say bipartisan. Bipartisan is where you try to get the two parties to knock one head and go forward. I am not for that. I am for non-partisan. Get somebody from the society to head the committee, not a politician. The government, if it supports it, fine. The UPP, we support it, fine. But do not let the process be driven by politicians. Once politicians drive the process, it's going to become divisive. It's going to end up in a way that has consequences that we do not want, unintended consequences.
And as you say, it's a process. It's not something that happens overnight.
It doesn't happen overnight,
Yes.
and it has to take place with consultation.
Yes.
Because are we going into being a republic just so that the governor general is called the president? Are we going in just for the cosmetics of it? Or is this an opportunity for us to engage the people of Antigua and Barbuda as a society, and not as politicians, but get persons that represent a wide cross-section of the Antiguan society. From the carpenter, the plumber, the lawyer, the social worker, the teacher, the police officer, the fireman. Bring everybody to the table, representatives. Let the unions be represented. Let the business community be represented. Let the churches be represented. Bring everybody together and let them lead the process. And I believe if we do it that way, we're going to get a better result. If it comes out as one politician trying to push it in one way, or another politician trying to push it in another way, it's not going to have the result that we want. And so I want to restate, it should be a non-partisan, not bipartisan. Non-partisan.
So the political parties then will be players in the process.
The political
but not
parties
the movers and the shakers.
will be players in the process. But what is important, let us make it mean something. We have a system of government that we have inherited from the British. Let us see if we can do something that is in our image and likeness. We have a Senate that's just appointed. Is there room for an elected Senate? We have a bicameral legislature, meaning you have an upper house and a lower house. Should we just have one house, like in St. Kitts and some of the other places? These are things that we have to look at. And what about the whole issue of accountability? What about the participation of civil society at the legislative level? There's so many exciting things that we can do to meet our needs as a people, knowing our history, knowing our culture, our way of life. What is the best way for us to govern ourselves? I am excited about the type of discussion and debate that we can have out there in the community and then let everybody contribute, and then let's take a vote on it, and let's get the best possible result, so that it's not just a cosmetic change, but a change that really improves the system of governance that we have, and paying attention to things like accountability and transparency, and introducing those concepts into the Constitution in a way that we look at some of the ways in which there are loopholes in the current Constitution, and we see how we're going to address those.
Okay, we're going to take a break, another break, and then when we come back, we continue with some of the questions that you've sent. And just to remind you, you have questions, you have comments, do share them with us, and you'll have them read on air. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
It's time to join the family at the People's Cooperative Credit Union Limited. We offer savings accounts, deposits, fixed deposits, loans, among other related services. You can even become a shareholder by purchasing a minimum of 50 shares at $5 per share. Membership is super easy and convenient. Just visit our newly opened credit union building on Upper Newgate Street, Monday to Fridays, 8:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. with proof of ID and address, along with $15 to cover registration and passbook, and you'll be set and on your way. For further information, call 462-8888 or 727-2285. People's Cooperative Credit Union Limited. Today, tomorrow, together.
And we say welcome back, and just to say that a note came in, someone is suggesting that we make it a multi-issue referendum in response to what
I think so. I mean, some people argue that the population is not sophisticated enough to deal with several issues, but I do not agree, and the party has taken the view that it is not about how many issues, because the fact is, if we keep on doing the referenda or referendums in the same way, we're going to get the same result. No referendum has ever succeeded in the Caribbean. And by succeeded, I mean the proposition has always been defeated. Every time a proposal is put to the Caribbean people, it is defeated for one reason or another. When Jamaica had the referendum on the Federation, the proposition that was put was defeated. The people said no. When in Grenada they put the referendum on the CCJ, the proposition was defeated. In St. Vincent, they had a multi-question referendum. It was defeated. In Antigua, we had a single-issue referendum. The proposal was defeated. So the proposals are always defeated. So you cannot continue doing it in the same way, which is why I stress it should be non-partisan. And because we can push it as a non-partisan issue, then the politics should not get in there. And as a people, we ought to be able to discuss it, see how we can tweak the different ideas, and put our collective wisdom to work and come up with a constitution that will be the envy, not just of the Caribbean, but the envy of all small island, modern, developing states. We can do it, because all that we have right now is what is supposed to be a mirror image of what takes place in the United Kingdom, in England. We have enough experience as a people that we can utilize what's beneficial from that system, but change those things which will work better for us in a small society and create modern systems of accountability and good governance. That is something I believe as a people we can do, and as a people we deserve.
Okay, another question coming in via Facebook. what do you plan to do about the unsustainable wage bill of the government?
The only solution to government expenditure, which we have spoken about, is growing the economy. And therefore, there has to be a strategy for meaningful investment to grow the economy. A UPP government will not look to send home people because the wage bill is high. That would be inhumane, and I just want to say that is not on the agenda for the United Progressive Party. What we want to do is to expand business, get more people to open their businesses, and get more people who have opened businesses to expand those. And so there has to be a clear strategy to do that. Once we do that, then people will naturally gravitate to better paying jobs in the private sector. They will gravitate to areas where they can express themselves, their talents, whatever qualifications they have, better opportunities to express those. That has to be the vision, that has to be the goal. And we will be planning so that these can be achieved. Not just talking, but putting realistic, meaningful plans in place so that we can do that. And I just want to touch on something, even though you haven't mentioned it. But I heard the Honorable Maureen Joseph the other day talking about when they had discussions about the IMF. And it's very important that we clear the air on this. I want to say, without any doubt, that obviously the Labour Party have been very poor negotiators. When Maureen Joseph said that they were told by the World Bank and the IMF that they had to send out how many thousand people and all the different things they had to do, and that they went into a homegrown program. The homegrown program that they went into had as one of its objectives to send home, I think it was 2,500 people. The names had already been drawn up. That's what they were going to do.
2,500.
2,500 people. Not only that, when we came into office, we met $1.8 billion in arrears. When they were in office, they raided Social Security. They did not pay into Social Security what they were supposed to pay in, and they took out over $200 million. In the end, Social Security was owed over $550 million. And they're boasting. $550 million. They raided Social Security. They raided the Free Trade Zone. They raided the FSRC. They raided the port. They raided medical benefits. Anywhere they could find money, they snapped it up, grabbed it up. When we came in, we met a huge debt and huge sum of arrears. Now, as I've said in the past, if you go to the IMF and you say, things bad, I don't know what to do, tell me what to do. Well, they will tell you what they think you should do. But it may not be what is in the best interest of the country at the time. And I'm going to say, I was Minister of Finance when we undertook an IMF program. Not one person was sent home. So how is it that when Maureen was there, they were telling him, you have to send home people. And he said, no, because I don't want to send home anybody. How is it that Gaston Brown is now saying that they want him to send home how many people and what they want him to do that he cannot do? When we went and got the IMF program, we got a loan. Eventually, they disbursed $101 million US, and we didn't have to send home one single person. All our social programs, we were able to keep every single social program that we had. It's about the negotiations. It's about the negotiations. It's about getting good advisors so that when you go to the table, you show them what your program is. And if your program is not about sending home people, then don't send them home. And you won't be forced to do it if you know what you're doing. Barbados undertook an IMF program a few years ago. And at the same time that they undertook an IMF program, some people would have said they would have to quit some of the social programs that they had. One of their most important social programs is free tertiary education for every Bajan man, woman, boy, and girl. Under the previous government, before Mia Motley came in, they had abandoned and abolished the free tertiary education. She came back in, and with the support of the IMF, she reintroduced free tertiary education so that every Bajan is entitled to go to university without having to pay $1. So the point I'm making is it depends on your negotiating skills and what you take to the table. I am not going to claim that I sat down and worked out everything myself. I would never do that. I had the benefit of some of the best advice that one could have. And that is where a politician needs to know what he knows and know what he does not know. The politician is not the technician. The politician is the policy maker. You make the policy. You decide where the country needs to go. And then you hire the right people to get you there. The people who can give you the technical details. I had the benefit of some of the brightest and the best Antiguans and Barbudans who worked in the Ministry of Finance, all of whom we had recruited. And we recruited Antiguans and Barbudans who could stand toe-to-toe with anybody from the IMF or the World Bank or any international financial institution. And they knew what they were doing. I also had the benefit of advice from one of the top development economists ever to come out of the Caribbean, Sir K. Dwight Venner, former governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. So you listen to people who can help to guide and show where in your negotiation you can bring benefits to people without bringing sufferation to people. Now, both Gaston Brown and Malvin Joseph were saying that they could not undertake a program because it would have meant sending home people. And for the avoidance of doubt, because there's some people who are going to say that I came here tonight to say that we are going to the IMF. I never said any such thing. And I just want to look straight in the camera and say I never said any such thing. What I am saying, however, is that whoever you're negotiating with, you must go with the right skill sets. You must go with people who can assist in terms of the negotiating strategy. Because the dunceness that I heard Malwin talking, I'm saying, so why are you going and negotiating and they tell you this and you walk away from it? Why are you doing that? Why don't you have a proper delegation? And why aren't you approaching this thing from a point of view to look at the different options to see what's best for the people of Antigua and Barbuda? And so let me be very, very clear. We will look to see what is best for the people of Antigua and Barbuda, whatever is best for the people. Because what I do know is that a situation where you're going to be owing one security company over $3 million, you're a failed state. A situation where you cannot provide police with a proper, comfortable station, with uniforms, with boots and these things, it's a failed state. A country where you cannot provide a fire truck for your people, it's a failed state. Where you can't provide books and laptop computers for your students in school, you're a failed state. And they need to admit they're failed. That's what has happened. They're failed. They're hiding. You owe, looking at the estimates, contractors in Antigua, small contractors who depend on the government for the little money, you owe them over $163 million. Jump from 52 million to 163 million. And you have the heart to stand up and tell people that you're doing well and you can't pay anybody and people out there suffering. You can't provide a stimulus for anybody. You can't help the small business people. You can't help anybody. You can't do anything. You're powerless. You borrow $540 million and you can't count for a penny and nobody can see where the money went. You're a failed government, a failed administration, a failed experiment. And it's time for the ALP to go. That's why we say, get rid of them. Time for them to go.
Okay, and I think a good follow-on question to all that you just said, this one again from Facebook. Given all the things currently going wrong in the country, how will your administration manage the expectations of the public as you work to bring the country back to a reputable state?
Very good question, and I would say, yes, you have to manage expectations. And one of the things I'm doing right now is showing that these things are possible, but they're possible with proper planning and discipline. And I think one of the things that everybody will recognize with any new UPP administration will be that there will be a new atmosphere of discipline. We have to bring some sense of order to our country. We have to do things right. We have to get things done in the correct way. That's what's not happening right now. As a result of which anything goes. Anybody take up what they want, mash up what they want. There's no accountability. Government borrow $540 million. Don't tell anybody anything. No accountability. These things have to stop. And so in terms of how we would go about managing expectations, first of all, tell people the truth. Tell people the truth. And one of the first steps that we would make as an administration would be an open consultation on the true state of the economy of Antigua and Barbuda. Not Lovell coming and saying this is what it is, not some other individual. Bring the facts to the people and explain everything so everybody will know exactly what the true position is. Don't put any spin on it. Don't try to mama guy people. Don't make things look worse than they are, and don't make things look better than they are. Make things be exactly as they are when you're talking to people. Tell people the truth. And I believe people are sensible. And people can tell when you're mama guying them and when you're telling lies to them. And so once we open the books and explain to people what the true situation is, and then we work out the strategy that a government, we will lead the way. We will lead the way in terms of the strategy that we would use going forward for rescuing Antigua and Barbuda. So I'm not daunted by it, by what we're going through, because we went through it before. In 2004, we met a country that was really in a state where the Labour Party said that we would not last 6 months because they know what they had left there. And so they said that we couldn't last 6 months. But through diligence, unity, and hard work, we were able to change that. And we were able to turn around the economy of Antigua and Barbuda, so much so that by 2006, we recorded the highest ever growth rate in this country, 12% growth in 2006. Never repeated in this country and never happened before that. So we have the strategies. We know what needs to be done. I'm happy that I have been with the party through all the changing scenes of life. I have been there when we lost elections. I've been there when we won elections. I spent 10 years in government holding positions where I have been able to see government from the inside, and I know what needs to be done. And I have the right team in terms of the men and women who can carry out the mandate of transformation, and we will do it. And we look forward to doing it because we will bring a better life to the people of Antigua and Barbuda.
Okay, I know we've gone past the hour, but there's a question that I think relates basically to what you just said. And the question is, with not having an accurate idea of the fiscal situation of Antigua and Barbuda, what are some of the basic things you think can be implemented or handled immediately and then chart the way forward for the obvious precarious position we are currently in?
Well, I think the question of fixing Social Security, that has to be one of the priorities. Getting education on track is not going to be costly. That is going to require intellectual capital, where we see how we can retweak our educational system, bring in relevant subjects and a different approach to prepare and train our young people for the new Antigua and Barbuda. New skill sets need to be brought to the table. We need to focus primarily information technology, the science subjects, as they say, the STEM subjects, and other areas that are really going to position this nation for going forward. And so we need to be forward-looking, forward-thinking, and as I mentioned, fixing some of the basic problems that affect our people, but fixing Social Security, fixing education, and getting the economy moving. I would think that those are some of the areas that we're going to definitely have to focus on, whilst we look about other things like our new approach to security, national security, bigger focus and emphasis on community policing and bringing the police into more patrols and keeping our communities safe. These are things that can be done with a different approach that won't require a lot of money. And that's really what this country needs. It needs a different management approach so that we can bring prosperity to our people.
Okay. I know we're a bit over time, but you, along with the leader of the opposition, jet off next week to a diaspora engagement in the U.S. Remind us about that, and what are your expectations as you prepare for this trip?
Yes, together with the Honorable Jamal Pringle, we'll be going up to 3 cities in North America, to Atlanta, to New York, and to Miami, where we will engage the diaspora. There are other members who will be joining the team. I know for sure, I believe Brother Jonathan Joseph will be part of the delegation, and also Brother Sherfield Bowen, I believe, will also be part of the delegation. We look forward to welcoming them as part of the team. And other of the candidates, other members of other candidates may also join. We are looking to see as many as possible who may wish to go and who will be accommodated. We want to engage Antiguans and Barbudans to establish a new line or a new source of investment capital. Normally, we tend to just look for foreign direct investment. Whoever that foreign investor is, we try to get credible foreign investors to come for some of the larger capital projects where we may not have the capital basis here in Antigua to carry out some of these projects. Or we stimulate domestic investment by incentivizing local business people to get into projects and so on. Well, we are now exploring and establishing a third line, which will be direct diaspora investment. Antiguans and Barbudans who are living overseas, who have done well for themselves, who have savings, who live in the US but their hearts are in Antigua. What they want is not just to come down to waste money. They want to know that there will be programs which will allow them to invest their money that can give them a good return on their investment. The role of government, therefore, is to put policies in place so that we encourage them through investment packages. For example, we may say we want to develop a housing program. We structure the housing program so you bring in multiple investors into the housing program. But you structure it in a way that there will be a return at the end of the cycle, so that everybody has confidence that if they put their money into this project, they will make dollars at the end of it and make a profit. And we have no difficulty with that. We're encouraging Antiguans and Barbudans to come back to invest. But people don't just want to invest in a vacuum. They want to see that you have a structure. When we put the bonds back on the table in 2006, treasury bills and bonds, there was a diaspora tour as well. And Antiguans and Barbudans were encouraged and did take up the offer to invest in government bonds. No, that is something that we started because the previous government, they had wrecked bonds. Their bonds had no value because they had promised, they hadn't paid, and if you put out a bond and you said you're going to pay 100% interest, people said chups and walk away. They would not be interested because they know you're not going to pay.
Yes.
UPP brought back credibility to bonds, and we would take it to another level now. We would now do investment packages, and we would look at various areas of the economy. I'm not going to say everything yet. We have other areas but everything we say, they go and do. So we're just letting people know that we have ideas, and we would look to see how they can invest through packages in meaningful projects that can turn a good profit and get our people involved in those. So things are coming, and it can be done. It needs a new way of thinking, and we have that new way of thinking.
Okay. Small business pull-up this Saturday.
Yes, we're doing the small business pull-up this Saturday in St. John's City South.
Yes.
We'll be giving our support to the small business sector. We've been doing it in several other constituencies. It's proven to be very successful. We interact, we share ideas, we listen to the small business people in Antigua and Barbuda, of whom there are many, and we circulate the dollars so that we at least play our part. And you know, to the naysayers, of course, because some of them didn't come up with the idea, it's a bad idea. They want to say this and want to say that. UPP is about innovation, and we're saying this idea has never been done in Antigua before, and it's a good idea. And those of you who are saying, oh, but you only spend $100, where's $100 more than what you spent? It's $100 more than what you spent. And what we are doing is turning around money in a slow economy, a sign of what we can do, because we're committed to helping business people in Antigua to make it easier for them at every level. We're listening, and we're doing whatever we can to make life better for all sectors of our society.
We've come to the end of our program for tonight. We've gone past the 1 hour mark, and we thank our producers for allowing us. Any final word, or?
I just want to thank everyone who listened, to say that the UPP is on the move. We're on a roll. We're in the communities. The small business pull-up is one such example. We are mobilizing in the constituencies at the level we are touching flesh and explaining our policies to people. Our politics is not about cursing people. Our politics is about showing people the difference that a united progressive administration can make. And we have plans for the economy, for the social services that are delivered to our people, how we're going to take care of our elderly, how we'll take care of our children, how we make sure that the children in school will be properly equipped for the world of work. The UPP is the answer. Let us go forward to the future boldly with the United Progressive Party, the right choice.
Okay, and on those sound advice, we say thanks to all our listeners, all our viewers, all our texters, everybody for being part of the Captain's Corner tonight. And until we come your way again next time, I'm Sean Nicholas wishing you a very pleasant evening. Good night.
It's time to join the family at the People's Cooperative Credit Union Limited. We offer savings accounts, deposits, fixed deposits, loans, among other related services. You can even become a shareholder by purchasing a minimum of 50 shares at $5 per share. Membership is super easy and convenient. Just visit our newly opened credit union building on Upper Newgate Street Monday to Fridays.